This scene illustrates the 33rd mistake salespeople make: not seeing yourself objectively.
Jim, nice of you to see me in your office today. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time.
I admire your company's products, so maybe we can do some business.
Good. I have some things to show you I think you'll be interested in, but first I gotta have a cigarette. I haven't lit up in an hour. I'm going crazy. You know the feeling?
Well, actually, no.
Oh, it's such a bad habit, but I just love the stuff. Can't seem to quit. Oh, I don't see any ashtrays here. You got one tucked away?
Well, to tell you the truth, I really can't stand
smoke.
smoke.
That's all right. I'll just use your wastebasket. Now, let's get down to business.
What was the upshot of this meeting? The salesperson lost the order. Jim decided that if the seller couldn't bother to be concerned about his reaction to smoke, she'd have little interest in his needs when it came to using the product. So Jim withheld an order he had been prepared to give. The lesson here is to become more aware of the impression we make on others. Salespeople must see themselves as others do if they're to advance in their careers. The wrong word, a boorish action, even dressing tastelessly, can doom a big order. How can you correct this mistake of not seeing yourself objectively? Periodically, do a self-appraisal. Take inventory. Stand back and try to see yourself as others see you. Always be conscious of your appearance, dress, and manner. It's impossible to change the habits of a lifetime overnight. But we can note where we need improvement and then work on whatever needs modifying to make ourselves more likable, laying the foundation for future success. But this process takes honesty and effort. Let's look into how to do it. Psychological research has shown that there are 4 traits that contribute most to a person's likability: intelligence, cheerfulness, friendliness, and congeniality of interest with the other person. When it comes to intelligence, let's assume that as a salesperson, you must be pretty well endowed. This is no business for the feeble-minded, so you're set with the first attribute right off the bat. You can train yourself to develop more of the next 2 attributes of likability: cheerfulness and friendliness. And when it comes to congeniality of interests with your prospects, this too can be expanded upon. Take time to develop interests that fit in with those of your buyers, or at least learn enough about the other person's interests to talk about them. It's a basic truth that if you start out by liking people, they will usually respond by liking you. But there is more to making a good impression than that, as you saw in the smoking encounter earlier. The problem is that many salespeople are unaware of certain characteristics that are distressing to other people. Fred is a salesperson who developed a technique to learn more about himself. He knew something was wrong in his makeup, but he couldn't put his finger on it. So he gathered his courage and asked several of his friends and customers.
I had them write down the traits they admired most and least in me. They sent their evaluations unsigned to me. Some of these answers gave me a jolt, but in the right direction. For example, I had no idea that I spent too much time talking and not enough time listening. I also didn't know that I had an annoying habit of interrupting. I was able to work on correcting these problems right away.
And Fred eventually overcame them. How can you shed your bad habits? One way is to substitute a good habit for a bad one. For example, if you blow your own horn too much, try to get in a plug now and then for the people who back you up, your sales manager, production people, and others. You might also say a kind word about the prospect or the prospect's firm without laying it on too heavily. After you have pinpointed your bad habits, use the new habits at every opportunity until they become automatic. You need to balance your self-appraisal with confidence in yourself and in your product. Lack of confidence will cause you to freeze up when confronting a prospect, weakening your presentation. You can boost your confidence by knowing that you have something worthwhile that the prospect needs. If you can make the buyer feel this need and recognize the worth of your product, the battle is yours. Concentrate on getting the prospect interested in you. Make yourself the kind of person who will attract and hold the prospect's attention. Salespeople who recognize only their virtues while ignoring their faults may achieve the heights in self-esteem, but they'll never be successful sellers. Let's review the way to correct the mistake of not seeing yourself objectively.
Appraise yourself periodically. Step back and note how your appearance, behavior, or manner might be offensive, habits that could be hindering your success. And note your good points, too.
4 traits are necessary to be liked: intelligence, cheerfulness, friendliness, and congeniality of interests. Train yourself to be more cheerful and friendly, and develop a knowledge of the other person's interests.
Ask your friends and, if you wish, your customers to evaluate your strengths and those areas that need improvement.
Substitute good habits for bad ones.
While objectively evaluating yourself, maintain your confidence.
Don't be afraid of self-appraisal and self-criticism. These are tools to help you mature as a salesperson. There's no such thing as a born success. The top producers earned their status and took some hard looks at themselves and worked on whatever needed to be changed. Hold up the mirror and do the same. Mistake number 34 of the 36 biggest mistakes salespeople make is ignoring customers' goodwill. What is goodwill? Well, it's not created by giving your customer an occasional slap on the back or by telling jokes. Today's tough competition demands a far more intelligent approach. The income of most sellers depends on repeat orders. Yet many salespeople act as if their first call will be their last, doing little or nothing to win the prospect's goodwill and confidence. Goodwill, then, is hammered out of many things: satisfying complaints, handling orders promptly, helping the retailer move the product, being honest, telling the product story convincingly, giving attractive presentation, being considerate of the purchaser's time and feelings, and much more. One important resource for material that will help you generate goodwill is your firm's advertising and promotional material. The consumer attention and goodwill aroused through these promotional and advertising efforts can mean money in your pockets. Follow through on their promises. Use tear sheets to punch up your presentations. And study the same materials from your competition. Note the differences from your company's approach. There are other benefits your company may offer customers, such as research facilities, testing, display material, and cost control systems. Don't assume that your prospect is aware of these services. Mention them. You can do much for the customer beyond taking orders to help build goodwill. If, for example, you sell to retailers and are good with merchandising, consider helping them make their stores more attractive, creating a promising environment for your product. If you sell directly to consumers, help them understand and get the most out of your product. So many products are alike. If you can show your customer how to extend your product's efficiency and durability through proper use, you'll be creating consumer goodwill and confidence, and your payoff can be repeat sales and a fine reputation. To review, you can eliminate the mistake of ignoring customer goodwill by
Satisfying complaints, handling orders promptly, being honest, telling the product story convincingly, giving attractive presentations, being considerate of the purchaser's time and feelings.
Your company's advertising and promotional materials are usually excellent sources of goodwill. Use them.
Know the services your company offers to customers, like research facilities and testing, display material, and cost control systems. These can all enhance goodwill.
Help your customer sell your product with information and, if appropriate, merchandising techniques. Help consumers understand and get the most out of your product.
developing the goodwill of your customers, a big step on the road to selling success.
We've been buying from you for a while, and we we've certainly been impressed with your product and with the way you've handled our account, but, well, I can get the same merchandise for 20% less. I'm awfully sorry, but I'm going to have to give our business to your competitor.
Sooner or later, every salesperson gets caught in a price squeeze. And trying to get out of that squeeze, many salespeople commit the 35th mistake salespeople make: matching price instead of quality. Andy, a synthetic dyes salesperson, used a winning strategy to meet the challenge of being undercut by the competition.
Our industry was in a bitter competition for business. Prices had spiraled downward, ripping profits to shreds. Most of the companies handling synthetic dyes were barely breaking even. Some were losing money. I knew I worked for a high-caliber firm that had a fair price policy. But one day, a purchasing agent told me she could get our dyes for 20% less from our competitor. Well, I took action. I went to my sales manager and asked about matching the competition's price. He showed me the costs of making our product. Our company was lucky to net 3 or 4% after taxes. That was the state of the market, and there was nothing to be done about it. We just had to ride it out. But in the meantime, how was our competition undercutting us by 20%? I checked with our Industries Association, with Dun & Bradstreet, and the Department of Commerce, and came up with some surprising figures. Our competitors, it seemed, had the same costs we did, and the same profit margin. So I went back to the purchasing agent and told her the situation. Something had to be fishy. The competition wasn't in business as a charitable institution. That 20% savings had to be cut from somewhere: raw material, labor, sales costs. Now, the buyer figured she was getting her product and her saving and wasn't impressed with what I said. Well, I had to satisfy myself with planting a seed in the buyer's mind. And on subsequent calls, I played the same tune with different lyrics, quoting industry costs, always leaving the impression that quality was being cut somewhere. Well, during one call, I was going through my usual litany of statistics when the buyer cut me off. She then gave me one of the largest orders my firm's ever received. Well, it turned out that there was a joker in our competitor's low price. Their deliveries were late, the quality of their product fell way below standard, and they were on the verge of bankruptcy because of their pricing policy. The buyer's company had been left holding the bag on a tight schedule for a new product. They lost money and credibility and prestige with their customers. Well, I didn't say this to the buyer. I didn't want to rub it in. But it's certainly true. If you want quality and dependability, you have to pay for it.
In a price spiral, many salespeople feel they have to sell at the competitor's price. They don't pause to realize that although price is important, there are many selling arguments to mount against it, including your company's reliability, quality, on-time delivery, research facilities, merchandising help, and promotion. Most purchasers will pay a higher price for quality and service. If this weren't true, the market would be monopolized by cheap, skimpy products. A firm anxious to protect a reputation will think twice about risking that name by palming off substandard merchandise. And you should exude an air of quality yourself. By dress and appearance, you should be a walking example of the quality you sell. Anybody can cut prices if he's willing to sacrifice something else. After making this clear to the purchaser, move on to the factors which make your product a better buy, regardless of price. Stress your company's reputation, reliability, and record of good service. And if you don't get the order immediately, keep plugging. Sooner or later, quality wins out. Let's sum up the important points of correcting the mistake of matching price instead of selling quality.
If your company's prices are fair, but are still being undercut by your competition, don't ask for price cuts from your company. Sell better. Don't discuss competitive prices with your prospect. Emphasize your product's quality and your company's reputation, reliability, and record of good service. Stress the security the buyer can enjoy in dealing with your company.
Make it clear to your purchaser that anybody can cut prices if he's willing to sacrifice something else. Then explain what makes your product a better buy, regardless of price.
If you don't get the sale immediately, keep plugging. A purchaser who has settled for an inferior product will usually realize the mistake eventually.
And remember, a price squeeze usually hurts the low-price competitor more than the high-quality firm that charges a fair price. So sell quality. You're on firmer ground.
I have this recurring nightmare. My boss and I are standing in front of the World Trade Center, and my boss says, Kathy, I want you to cold canvass every office in the building right now. Ugh, I wake up in a cold sweat.
Could that be your nightmare, too? If you feel less than nonchalant making cold calls, you may be making the last of the 36 biggest mistakes salespeople make, dodging the new prospect. If so, here are some tips on how to lose your fear of cold calling and how to make cold calling pay off, whether you're using your feet or the telephone. Most salespeople shy away from the cold call because of fear of the unknown. But after the ice is broken, most salespeople find that the experience of making cold calls isn't so bad. The key here is refusing to be discouraged, even when facing rebuffs.
Easier said than done. I mean, I walk into an office and I ask to see the person in charge. But then what if he or she refuses to see me? I mean, that's what I worry about.
If that happens, Kathy, what you have to do is go to another office. Don't be afraid of the prospect. Even if you hear a no, it's not a catastrophe. There are plenty of other prospects to see. And the same applies to making cold calls on the phone. Don't let yourself be defeated because you get a negative response. And be sure to be polite even when turned down. Thank the prospect. After all, you never know if next time the no will be a yes. When making cold calls in person, salespeople often make another mistake. It's the way they organize cold calling. Instead of developing a planned pattern of calls, many salespeople hit prospects in a spotty, time-wasting manner. There's a simple, highly effective solution to this problem. Try this. After calling on a regular customer, stay in that same building and cover as many offices as time permits. This can save you hours of travel time, parking, looking for taxis, whatever. If possible, you may even want to canvass a nearby building or two. Remember that cold calls can become quite hot and profitable. Many of the most successful salespeople built their customer list just by making cold calls. Face-to-face meetings between buyer and seller are at the heart of salesmanship. As the salesperson, you must initiate those meetings. Use whatever tools are available to you and most appropriate for selling your product: telephone, promotion, advertising, merchandising, and display techniques. But none of these methods can match the powerful force of person-to-person selling. Let's review how to correct the mistake of dodging the new prospect.
You're not alone if cold calling makes you uncomfortable. But remember that once the ice is broken, the experience can be both pleasant and profitable.
Don't be afraid of the prospect. Even if you get a no, it's not a catastrophe. There are plenty of other prospects to see.
Organize your cold calling. Use your time to best advantage by making cold calls in a building before or after a scheduled meeting with an established customer in that building.
There are many tools for selling, but none is as powerful as a face-to-face meeting with a prospect.
Top producers in selling got that way largely through sheer guts. At rare times, someone might have eased the way to a particular prospect, but most sales were made on initiative. What's the key to being a top producer? Just walk in, stick out your hand, and start selling. We hope you've enjoyed Prentice Hall Audio's production of The 36 Biggest Mistakes Salespeople Make and How to Correct Them. Adapted and produced by Leslie Korn for Ariel Productions International. Narrated by Peter Thomas and featuring Gene Richards, Larry Robinson, and Bob Sevra. For information about other Prentice Hall Audio business and professional programs, or to send your comments, please write to us at the address on the program package. The 36 Biggest Mistakes Salespeople Make and How to Correct Them is copyright 1989 Prentice Hall Audio. All rights reserved.
Aw, it's over. Too bad.
Hey, gang, we could always listen again.
Right on! Way to go!